thanks for coming on.
Yes.
So what I want to talk about today is basically a little bit about you. You're one of my superheroes. You're one of my rock stars.
Oh, wow.
And I think, I just want to talk about, let's start by, kind of talking about what your projects, what you're doing with your work, and we'll kind of go into it from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I started 10 years ago building a magazine, print and digital, called Soundsphere, which was, I'd come back from London. I was living in London, working for the NME, working for Rock Sound, Metal Hammer, T3, a bunch of gadget magazines, doing placements and internships, and then getting work. And then basically I got some funding to do a magazine specific to the north of England, spotlighting alternative music for the north of England, but not just music, arts and culture as well. So that's like the alternative to mainstream pop. We weren't only doing bands, we were doing movies, we were doing games, we were doing all kinds of stuff. It was meant to be a great arts and culture publication specific to our key areas, so Hull, Leeds, Sheffield, Manchester. But then it became, over 10 years, it became so much bigger, so we ended up going to review South by Southwest in America, and concentrating, of course, each time on bands that might be playing from Yorkshire or something like that, or from the north. But everywhere we went, we had that concentration on bands from the north, but we were able to travel. So we've been to Germany, we've been to Serbia, we've been to America a bunch of times, we've been to Hungary, and different festivals all over the UK and Europe, Download, Leeds Festival, etc., spotlighting the best alternative arts and culture music from the north. But then basically from there, so many opportunities have come. So I've ended up working with academic institutions, universities and colleges, doing public speaking stuff, talking about basically the music industry in the north of England, and more specifically Yorkshire, and the opportunities that are there in the music industry and the arts in this area. Because most of our industry, and if you're a journalist or you want to be a journalist, I would advise that you go down south and make those contacts, do your internships and do your time, I suppose is the phrase. But if you can't, and you can't afford that, because I was very lucky. My family have always been incredibly supportive of me. I lived with my distant relatives when I was in London, so I had that support. Not everybody does, so we are the kind of antidote for that. What we do is we say to people, I mean, we've worked with universities as far as Chester, which obviously breaks a little bit of the northern rule, but we want to support as many people as we can. So we worked with Chester University, we've worked with University of Central Lancashire and Preston, Leeds Beckett we've done stuff with, we've even done stuff with Hull College and York St John's, stuff like that. So basically those types of institutions come to us and say, right, okay, we need work placements, we've got students here that want to work in journalism, but they can't go to London, they can't afford to live there, because it's kind of an interesting system which I kind of rebel against, which is that kind of, you've got to live 12 months for free, down south, and it's nothing against the PRs and the bands and the artists I know down there that have worked their backsides off to get to where they are and done that time. But there's a lot of people that can't afford to do that, especially in areas like Hull, Leeds, Doncaster, Barnsley, etc. One of our best writers is from Scunthorpe, and she's just about to go to London and move to London based on her work with us and numerous other magazines that she's been able to work with because of the work she's done with us, but also the Warren Youth Project, which is an incredible resource for young people in the city of Hull, and I've also done some work with them too. So again, it's kind of snowballed. Opportunities have just kept coming my way in the creative arts, and it's nice that I can make a living doing that. But it's kind of always, I've always wanted to push myself to do new things, stuff that challenges me, like I'm in bands, and I'm a touring musician as well, which is an incredible opportunity. I've played Europe, and I'm just about to play Thailand, and stuff like that. Through this job, it all relates to my work, because I would never have, thought I could run around festivals and interview bands or anything like that if I hadn't been working on Soundsphere, and I would never have thought I was capable of playing in front of people if I hadn't have done public speaking for Soundsphere, you see. So it's all kind of relative, and I've had some wonderful opportunities. Some of our writers have gone on to work for the Independent on Sunday. They've gone on to work for NME. They've gone on to work for all kinds of different music publications nationally and internationally. All from an internship or a placement with Soundsphere, which is kind of that was my goal, was to provide creative opportunities. More recently, I was offered the opportunity through a music incubation space in London called The Rattle, based at Tobacco Dock, wonderful people. There's a guy I interviewed there in this music startup called Chris Howard, and Bobby Bloomfield, who used to drum in a band called Does It Offend You Yeah, who were fantastic. They started this music startup in London, and I interviewed them via Skype because they wanted to set up a northern, they're based in London, but they wanted to set up a northern platform. Yeah. So we interviewed them for Soundsphere because it's relevant to our audience, you know, talking about music incubation space and the validity of maybe putting it in Manchester or Sheffield. And from there, it was a really interesting story. So about 20 minute Skype conversation. Chris Howard used to be a lecturer, and he graduated from MIT in Boston. And I went to college in New Hampshire, Keene State College, a little bit cheap plug there. And I went to, you know, I studied there for a little while. And so I have friends and people that I consider family over there. And I happened to be, before this Skype interview, I happened to book a flight over there to go and spend some time there, do some travel writing. And me and Chris happened to get talking, and he was like, oh, well, I've got a colleague, then they're looking for a journalist in residence. They're looking for someone to go and document the entrepreneurial ecosystem. MIT is one of the greatest sort of science and tech universities in the world. And they do work with robotic limbs. They do work all kinds of incredible stuff for science and tech, basically. And I went over there to kind of document that and interview some of these young people doing incredible work within the science and tech sphere, and they're going to sort of change the world, basically. And I genuinely believe that. You know, I was working in this lovely space called the Martin Trust Centre for Entrepreneurship, and within that, there are entrepreneurs in residence. Now, the entrepreneurs in residence, they go around and they talk to everybody in the space and they find out what they're doing, and they challenge them. They kind of, you know, they push them to do better. Now, I was there typing away, doing my thing, doing my interviews, which is what I do every day. And the entrepreneurs in residence, you know, would come up to me, whether it was in the university or in the Muddy Charles, the kind of pub, the pub they have there at MIT, and they would say, so Dom, you've come here, you're doing this, you do Soundsphere magazine, but what else do you want to do? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What else do I want to do? This is what I do. I'm you know, work in the music industry, etc., etc. But they were like, no, there's something else there. And these people had known me for a matter of weeks, you know, at the time, and they were like, no, you can do something else. You can do something more with your time and your energy. And so the kind of seeds for WARO, or Wobbling About and Rocking Out as it is in its full form, kind of were born to take the kind of base of what I've done with Soundsphere, create a platform for alternative arts and culture for the north of England. But then I was like, I want to continue doing interviews, I want to continue doing podcasts, I want to continue doing creative stuff, but I want to interview people with disabilities and people with mental health issues who are doing incredible things in business, doing incredible things with their lives, despite what challenges they may or may not have. So WARO is basically was formed. The idea of it was formed in Boston, in the US, and then I get questioned about why I did this a lot, but I came back to Hull because I'm from Beverley originally, but I always wanted to come back. I spent 10 years away, like most people. I moved around, so York, Preston, London, Chester, a bunch of different places in the country that have been very good to me. But I always wanted to come back and live in the centre of Hull, city of culture, as it kind of just finished off at the time. I thought it was an exciting time to come back here and do something cool and start a business in Hull, from Hull, and take that and the message of talking about mental health awareness, talking about disability, and promoting companies like Elephant in the Room, who are based in Hull, who promote deaf awareness and do some wonderful stuff, promoting Self Love Club, which is Millie Smith, and Positivity Pop-Up, which is Rishi Bhaskara, friends of mine from a very long time ago that just happen to be doing wonderful things with social media and their brand to promote positive change. And so we interview those types of people from Hull, but then we also interview music industry professionals who have dealt with mental health, who are notable figures. So Eddie Temple Morris, who was the guy that discovered Zane Lowe years ago, he worked for MTV, done all kinds of stuff. He's a friend of mine, and he campaigns nationally for CALM, the male suicide prevention charity.
Yes.
So I speak to Eddie as well. And then we do podcasts. So we do podcasts with people that are doing really cool stuff in this city and around the world, and we do interviews with them too. And the idea is to speak to musicians, speak to everyday people doing amazing things with their lives to either promote or to promote and support mental health awareness, or maybe they've got a challenge themselves and they deserve a spotlight, and our job with WARO is to then do that. So those are kind of my main things. There's other stuff too.
Just a few.
Yeah.
I think I mean, you touched on internships and the cost of it's just too expensive. Yeah. I mean, even so, like one of my internships for Bombix PLN came from London.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's cool that you can give a platform to people, but I do want to talk about WARO and accessibility.
Yeah.
I like, as you know, I'm an advocate of mental health and, accessibility. Basically, I'm a person that's purely about inclusivity.
Yes, of course.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, WARO is quite an important platform. But how do you define, because in my eyes, every single person on this planet suffers from some form of mental health. So how do you define who you interview for that?
It's a very good question. So, I mean, basically I go out and I find people, but there are people, what we do is on social media, we actively encourage people to come forward. So basically, if they've got a story to tell and they've got something to promote, whether it's a business or a project or maybe a struggle that they've been through, then they can come to us and we can tell their story. I'm excited to do that. Obviously, Soundsphere has many arms developed over 10 years, but WARO is still in its early days, so it's kind of just me plugging away, finding the right people. So what I would use this for, and this wonderful platform that you've given me, is to say, if people have an interesting story or a story and a challenge that they've faced and they think they've got a story to tell, or they want me to bring it out of them, then I can do that, and I'd be very excited to do that. So I think that everybody suffers from different kind of mental health challenges and maybe some challenges with regards to disability. I want to hear from you. I want to speak to you, and I want to kind of promote your work or your life. Yeah. And that's kind of where we are. I've met some wonderful people so far, but they're very much advocates on a national, international scale for disability and our mental health. So yeah, we encourage people to come forward to us all the time.
I think because you've just said we've just said that everyone suffers from mental health, but not everybody. Or should we not say suffer? Should we say it's a challenge?
Yeah, we'll say challenge.
Yeah, we'll say challenge.
Sit back and relax on this nice couch.
And
I'm not feeling very. I'm feeling very comfortable right now. Good. living the dream.
But not everybody has the challenges of disability, and
no.
For me, and why you attracted me to bring you onto this podcast is because you manage these challenges very well, and I've known people that don't have disabilities complain more than yourself. And I just kind of want to know a bit about your challenges, going through your career. What are the challenges that you've faced?
So it's a very interesting question, Lucy, and thank you very much. I think for me, growing up, I had a very supportive family, and my mum was there for me for all my operations. My dad was there for me as well. I went through a lot of pain. I was in hospital most of my young life. During school, and it was a difficult time, lots of cuts and scars and things, and lots of bones being moved into different parts and stuff, and I'm eternally grateful to the doctors and nurses that were there for me during that time as well to enable me to be this way. I can certainly get worse, but I can't get any better, so this is, I've got to maintain where I'm at now, so I'm constantly trying to stay active. Doing stuff like this with you is really cool. I'm constantly trying to keep moving forward, and I've got some really cool people around me helping me to do that. I think that, I was told, that I wouldn't, be on radio, and I was told I wouldn't be on TV because the world wasn't ready for that yet. This was 10 years ago, but yeah. I've since then gone on to be on the radio. I've since then gone on to be on TV, and I've since then gone on to do these things. And it's very possible for anybody to do that if you have something to say and a message that's, I think, where possible, as positive as possible, and as motivate. Trying to all I want to do is motivate people. I always say it's a bloody good job. I have so many good people around me from a personal and business standpoint, because I just want to help people. I want to support people, and it sounds very romantic, but basically, I'm in a position to do that. You know what I mean? I've been very, very fortunate with regards to the opportunities that have been given to me. Very fortunate with the types of people that have invested in what I do, and it's enabled me to, have the opportunity to support others. At places like the WARO Youth Project, where I've started working with young people there who have come from very difficult, challenging backgrounds. That's one of my dream jobs. That's one of the reasons I came back to Hull, was to specifically do work with the WARO Youth Project, and not just be in the wonderful space we have at C4DI. So, going back to your question, I've had a lot of challenges, but who hasn't? And also, it's very easy. I was born with cerebral palsy, so I've kind of grown up with it, and I've kind of grown up, dealing with, different types of people saying different types of things. So you first get told you're not gonna do this, or you're not gonna be able to do that, or you're not gonna be able to run around festivals, or you're not gonna be able to see X, Y, and Z band, or you're not gonna be able to interview X, Y, and Z band. For some of my interviews, some of my greatest interviews, there's a band called Placebo, and it was actually a great talking point for them to talk to me about my disability. The same with bands like Skindred and things like that I've met since as well. It's become a talking point why I'm there, and what and it inspires positive conversation. But first, when I started, there was a lot of people telling me I couldn't do that. There's also people still to this day, unfortunately, it doesn't happen too often, but you get people in the street and they might be holding hands with a partner, and people will be like, well, what are you doing with him, love? That kind of thing. So that does happen, not too often, but it does happen, and it's not perhaps something that people might not expect. But that's the thing. But then everybody has different types of struggles to deal with. Everyone has, those people, in question making those comments might not have had as a supportive upbringing as I've had. They might not have been educated as, might not have had the access to education I was able to. So there's reasons why people hold certain opinions, and I try and be as understanding as possible with regards to people's, viewpoints, because, like anything, what I would always say is it's good to have a conversation, it's good to talk, you talk about accessibility. I do a lot of work in music venues now, and the way I approach it is that people say, oh, why don't you get angry because this venue doesn't have a ramp, or why don't you get angry because this venue hasn't got X, Y, and Z thing in it? And what I would always say is, if speak to the venue, and most of the time I have found that people are accommodating and supportive, and willing to change, willing to develop their business model to support people with disabilities, because they understand that it's a great customer base for them. Mostly, though, I think that people don't have these things in their venues because they've not got regular access to someone with a disability. A lot of the times, venues I know that do have things automatically installed when they first get the business together are people with a daughter or a partner or a parent who have disabilities. If you don't see it regularly, how are you supposed to understand it properly? And you know what I mean? I think that's my general approach. Some people may disagree, and I welcome people to comment and to talk about their opinion. But I think that personally, it's difficult to go into anywhere and say you should do this, you should do that, you should be doing this, if they haven't. We as humans we struggle. We need to learn in order to understand. And if you're not regularly confronted with something, or you're not regularly around something, how are you supposed to understand it? But most of the venues I've spoken to, just finishing off, have been very open to making changes. It's just making them realise the monetary, in terms of the monetary investment, why it's important, and how much, just how many music fans there are. There's some incredible outlets out there at the minute, like Attitude Is Everything, nationally working to build more, to get more accessibility in music venues. And I think it's about having those conversations. It's about people with disabilities who are music fans going into venues, not necessarily attacking them for not having certain things, but talking to them about why it would be good for them to invest the money and the time and energy into, putting more, putting more things in with regards to accessibility, whether it's in the bathrooms or whether it's outside the venue or inside the venue. It's all about that conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, like you've just said about how open they usually are, and they can accommodate in some way. It's not like a permanent fixture, but the venues will go out the way to help if this is brought up. But just going back slightly, you talked about the people that aren't educated, and they're they're saying things that are harsh, and you know, you have a very positive outlook on it. And I guess it's because you've probably lived with it for so long that you do grow a thick skin over these things.
Yeah.
But I think for me, that kind of behaviour stems from how someone is parented. And, you know, I think, and then, you know, you can change, of course. It depends on your surroundings, but how, you know, does it ever affect you today more than it did in the beginning? Does it depend on the day?
It affected me a lot when I was younger, but then you know, then I met lots of very supportive and understanding people in various clubs and bars and places that we grew up in together.
Yeah.
You know, and I met some wonderful people, and that changed my whole outlook. You know, I think that my advice is do cool shit, and people will find you. You know, I think that if you're in your element doing good stuff and you're doing stuff that you're passionate about, people are attracted and drawn to that. So while people might still have these preconceptions about what I'm capable of in various, you know, parts of my life, I've found some very fantastic people around me, friends, family, you know, partners through my 33 years on this planet, you know, who have been, you know, incredible and incredibly supportive of me. And we, you know, I've travelled the world. Very fortunately, you know, I've had, you know, some wonderful experience with friends, family, and partners who have, you know, just been exceptional. And it's all been because when I'm out and I'm having a dance and I'm enjoying myself and I'm at a gig and I'm in my element, and again, I do things that I love and make me passionate. And I would say this to anybody. Obviously, different people have different opinions. Again, I'm more than well. I'd love to talk to people about this, but I think that whatever ability you are at and whatever struggles you are facing, if you can do things that you love and are passionate about, then people will be drawn to that. So I think that first and foremost, it's the old adage of you have to love yourself before you can love anybody else. And I think that it took me a long time when I was younger and a teenager to do that. And then when I met the amazing people, when I was going out, when I was going to shows, when I was in my element, doing things that I loved, I met these amazing people, and I was where I wanted to be, and that in itself was a positive, and people were attracted to me because I was doing cool shit in places that I loved with people that I loved, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's an important message, and you know, those people outweigh the bad that you go through, and I think that is definitely the way, because the more you build your community around you that do support you and actually don't even look at that as anything anymore, people forget once they get to know you. I think deep down, and so yeah, I think that's I think it's a big thing that we need to do, and I think it's not even for people just with disability, but anybody. I think it's, you know, like the young Greta Thunberg at the minute. I mean, she just put something online lately about someone picking on how she looks. She's 16 years old and she's got Asperger's, and you know, she's doing great things, and you see some trolls on Twitter and all of this having a go at her for doing what she's doing and saying, oh yeah, I'm riding a plane first class, this and that. And it's just like, let the girl get on with what she's doing. She's got a positive message. Yeah,
and a great platform and a great voice. And that's what I mean. I think going back to your work, you know, doing this podcast and various other things, you know, you're working, you know, you're working tirelessly to do something cool and not only promote your work, but promote mental health awareness in Hull and the surrounding areas. I know you've travelled around the country, and I think that, you know, I think that it's very important to and you're going to get people that disagree with you. I'm going to get people that disagree with me. It's just part of the game. It's part of the way it's part of the world, and it's fine. I think the more conversation, whether it's positive, well, I think when I say whether it's positive or negative, I think the more conversation that you have, the more you know, the more positive it is. You know what I mean? People are always going to have different opinions, and that in itself is a real positive thing. You know, conversation, as I've learned in my personal life and my professional life, etc., is key to success, I think.
You're always going to get negative, like you say. I mean, for me, when I first launched this podcast, I had a lot of men telling me that I'm narrowing my audience by 50% because it's got the acronym PMS in the title, which is a little bit silly, because for anyone that's insecure enough not to listen to a podcast based on that kind of thing, I don't really want them listening anyway. But it was a play on words, you know.
It was very clever,
Yeah, it's just love, death and PMS. It was, you know, we talk about these careers that we have and the emotional sacrifice, and it's kind of, I'm going to flip it, but it's the storm before the calm. Like, it's that feeling of emotion for a period in time. You know, it's a play on words. And people, you know, we're trying to do that. I mean, it's not connected to what I do full-time with Bombix PLM, but I wanted to get something out there.
It's an outlet, it's a platform.
Yeah, because not everybody's going to use a PLM system, but I still care very much about what I'm doing with Bombix PLM and the message that I'm giving out, and I'm trying to push that out into people that don't even use that, so that people know that there's people out there that are career driven, that have the same issues as them. They have the same emotional baggage that comes with the sacrifice of having a career.
And I think you've become an advocate, you know, for mental health in the area through this work. And obviously people are tuning into what you're doing, and then discovering, you know, the system that you're working on, and traveling nationally and promoting and having, you know, so it's great because your professional and personal life, because obviously we've talked about mental health issues between the two of us as well, off camera, and I think that, you know, it's important to have that, because you're, like I said, you're passionate. You know, you're in your element when you're not only talking about the system you're working on, but you're talking about mental health. You're helping other people.
I'm a people person.
You know, you're helping me talk about what I'm doing, and I find it therapeutic. You know, I find this whole process, you know, sitting here with a coffee, you know, on this incredibly comfortable couch, you know, looking at lovely plant life. It's cool, man. Like, do you know what I mean? It's nice. I find it relaxing. And as someone that struggles constantly with work-life balance and the mental health challenges that presents itself, you know, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk about this shit. Do you know what I mean?
I love it.
You know, it's cool, and I'm very lucky. You know, and it gives me a platform to say how, you know, how cool it is, because I wouldn't be doing anything I'm doing if it wasn't for, you know, people that have supported me in Hull and around the country and around the world, and you know, like yourself. You know, I mean, we've had so many conversations, you know, since I moved back here and since you came back, that I've benefited from, and I've gone away feeling mint. I've gone away feeling X.
You feel good.
You know, and that is very valuable. I think people underestimate. I think we are sociable creatures. I think we need human connection. Not all the time, of course not. We need some space. But I think that people, you know, like, I wouldn't be doing the stuff I'm doing if I didn't have a cool team of people around me. I think anyone on a personal level, I've got so many good mates that have been there for me for years, man. Years and years. People have stuck by me, you know, and I'm a very stressful person to be around. You know, I'm far too enthusiastic most of the time. Now, and I'm also really slow. But yeah, you know, it's like, you know, like, I've got good people around me, and I think that's, you know, that is what motivates me. You know, stuff like this motivates me, conversations like this motivate me, and so when you have mental health challenges, and when you're struggling, and on those days when I'm in a lot of pain and I struggle to get out of bed, or I struggle to get through the day because of my feet or my legs, and I struggle in my brain because I'm feeling a bit down, you know, it's conversations like this, and all the conversations that we can have in C4DI, conversations that I can have with young people at the Warren Youth Project, you know, that lift me and encourage me to keep going. Yeah,
I mean, you're not the first person, and you won't be the last, to say that these podcasts are like therapy. As soon as someone sits on that couch, they're like, this is like therapy, and they go away feeling quite good. But that's what it's about. It's about conversation. It's about relating to people and saying it's okay to not be okay. You've got a lot going on. You've got this high-flying career. You've got this job. You've got this passion that you're interested in. And there are going to be things that interweave.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot around that now. It's become very trendy and cool to be promoting mental health and do it's okay not to be okay. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it, and it doesn't mean that anybody should be doing it. The more people that are talking, in relationships, on a personal level, you've got to learn to communicate, you've got to learn to converse and have conversations, even if it's uncomfortable. A business, you have to do that. Conversation is key, I think, fundamentally to any kind of success you can have in life, whether it's personal or professional. And that is uncomfortable for some people with mental health issues and with disabilities, and I appreciate that, I do. But I think if you can, like I say, when we go back to the music venues thing, if venue managers can talk to people with disabilities just in case they might be a little bit nervous, and equally, if people with disabilities can make the effort, if they feel like it and if they feel motivated to talk to venue managers, then that conversation is going to be key to success. If you're struggling in a relationship, you need to sit down with your partner, or a friendship, you need to sit down over a coffee, on a nice couch, in a room with lots of plants. Plant life's good for it's good for your brain, isn't it? I've just put loads of plants in my space in the WARO, and it's good. It
feels good.
Yeah, exactly. So sit down in a space that makes you comfortable and have a conversation, and you'll find that it does soothe, and it does motivate you, I think.
Yeah.
I kind of probably went off on one then, but
that's okay.
That's
Thank you very much. It's been really good.
Yeah, thank you ever so much, yeah.